Welcome everybody to the VMUG 4. This is our 4th North American Virtual Miro User Group event. Like to just kick things off quickly with a little bit of housekeeping items. So as people join, hopefully we can keep things flowing along. So first is please mute your mic if you're not directly involved in the conversation. It's going to be myself you're going to be listening to for the first little bit, and then Natalie as she takes over for her presentation. Following Natalie's presentation or beforehand, if you think of anything, there's a spot we've arranged on the board for questions on the Miro board. If you're on there, you can also ask questions through the Zoom meeting chat. We'll have a group of us looking into that to make sure your questions translate over there onto the board, and we'll get them asked of Natalie as she goes. And I think the last kind of typical item of these sorts of meetings is if you're at your home office or at your place of work, your fire exits and bathrooms are hopefully where you left them. So please observe all the typical rules there. I won't have any control and assume no responsibility for anything that happens along those lines. So first and foremost, I wanted to send out a big thanks to Miro and the Miro community, and especially to our fearless leader and guide, Brittany Koshera. She's been a huge essential part of getting this user group community going, and she's been a wealth of information. She's always opening doors for us. It's just a pleasure to work with her. So thank you very much, Brittany, for everything you do to keep us together.
Oh God, you're gonna make me cry on this one. I'm not gonna. Thank you.
Every time we'll get you. My name is Jonathan White. I'm a management consultant from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I've been a Miro user for 2 years now. I couldn't even give you a straight answer if you were to ask me how I use Miro, because we use it for brainstorming, for modeling, for product and service development, for process improvement projects, for organizational redesign and transformation, both in distributed and with local teams. And so I've really found that the only limit to Miro is your imagination. And events like these user groups are great for people who are new to the product to learn about how powerful this collaboration tool is, and for returning veterans, because there's always tips and tricks that we can all learn to deliver better value to our clients and our customers. The time I've spent with the Miro community, I've met a lot of really great folks, really neat people, and so participating in these kinds of events is a great way to get to know folks who are using the tool. We all have that in common. The former Miro user groups we've had have been based on a couple of different topics. We've had brand and design sprints, user experience design, the integration with Jira. We've had gamifying facilitation, and so those topics are all really interesting, but even if they're not your jam, still getting to collaborate and how they work together is really, really interesting. And I learned something every time I go into this. And I think today's speaker is a little bit close to my heart because it's close to how I use Miro in many ways, which is really exciting for me. So I'm just going to share my screen here so that we can see a few things. So the topic today is going to be rapid visualization of qualitative research from Excel to Miro. We always like to start off these user group events with some pro tips. These might be things that you know or maybe that you don't know, but I always find them very interesting. The first one being you can duplicate shapes or objects on a Miro board. So if you've been using Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste, you can actually just select an object and hit Control-D or Command-D, and it will duplicate the shape right next to it. I don't believe we'll be using it today, but there is some onboard voting functionality in Miro, and this can be great when you're working with groups of folks. You can, as the administrator of the group, and set up the vote for maybe sticky notes that you have. And on the bottom menu bar in Miro, there's a little thumbs up symbol. You click that, it gives you the guidance to actually go ahead and vote, and then the voting can be counted afterwards, and the best ideas can be acted on. This is a very important one, pointing versus panning. You'll notice in Miro, sometimes you have a pointer tool, sometimes you have the hand tool. V is the shortcut key for that. I always find myself clicking where I shouldn't be and dragging objects out of there. Instead, you'll be grabbing areas of the board and simply moving your view around, not the actual items. But if you do happen to use the pointer tool and drag something that you shouldn't have, our next pro tip is undo. Probably my favorite functionality in Miro. Controller Command Z will do it, and there's also the little return arrow at the top of your screen, so you can undo what you've done. And everybody makes those whoopsies. It's usually a good way to ice break is by messing the whole board up and then just undoing what you've done. We did have a little bit of an icebreaker up, and it is still there. So I encourage everyone, whether you've done it or not, to go into the Miro board. You can see the instructions for what we're looking for in the bottom left corner. Basically, you can use the icon finder to look up a symbol that resonates with you, that represents who you are or where you're from. Drop it onto the map and then add an icon to let us know who you are and where you are. And you can set that comment to resolved so it won't show up on the screen. But we'll revisit it later. And as you can see, we've got a couple of users from North America and even coming in from South America here. So that's really interesting. And I know Mark, who's attending, would be over here in Australia. So we'll get him to get his up there at some point too. It's always great to see where folks are attending. And what is happening here? Here we go. Here's the section for comments. We've dropped some blank stickies onto the Miro board, so please double click in any one of these, write in your comment or question. We'll make sure we get back to it after Natalie has gone through her presentation. So jumping into that, I will say Natalie Mandrico is a product manager at WeatherBug. She manages distributed teams and works on designing and engineering solutions to deliver digital experiences that add value to customers and to businesses. Natalie's story of how she utilizes Miro is actually really quite fascinating and really useful to hear. So bringing that qualitative data to life is a journey for sure. And I'll turn it over now. So everybody, please welcome Natalie Mandrico.
Thank you, Jonathan. Should I share my screen so we can skip
Absolutely.
over? Yeah, let's do that. So I guess you need to stop sharing your screen so that I can start mine. Yeah, let's do that. And I'm sharing the here. And let me start doing this. And I'll do that. So I'm switching to presenter mode. And here we go. Yeah, as Jonathan mentioned, my name is Natalie Mandrico, and I'm a product manager at WeatherBug. I started using Miro around maybe a year ago, maybe even a year and a half ago. Because of the nature I had my nature of my work in the past. And today, my focus is going to be showing just the 3 examples of the real use cases for Miro. And it might be more relevant to you if you do either product management or even project management, or you do user experience research and design. When you do this research, qualitative in nature, it actually starts with a conversation with your people, whether it's your users or customers. And then that notes that you're taking, it might be just an Excel file that you use and you're putting, it's in this example, it's more of a journey map in 3 columns, but it's just Excel file with the notes. And as a researcher, sometimes I use Evernote, OneNote, just to capture some insights from the interviews I had with people. And sometimes it's even just multiple files in my Google Drive. So my natural challenge then, how can I translate those insights from multiple interviews to make it relevant to my team, my project or product team? So this is my question that I usually have. How might I translate research that I've done into action to my team? And the whole presentation is going to be focusing on achieving that goal. And the way I achieve that goal is actually using Miro. So Miro for me is a tool to get from research into action, so we can start implementing improvements or new products, new features, or even new marketing campaigns. So the first example that I want to show, so maybe I need to switch over, okay, maybe I need to make it, remove highlights. Yeah, let me just hide this.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but I didn't want to
Yeah.
interrupt, and then I did.
Yeah, and I managed. So the first case is about the product team that discovers features to build. So it's in your work, it might be you responsible or you part of a product company, and it's always a question what we should build, whether we actually need to build something to improve the experience for our users. And it's quite relevant to Miro itself, right? Because they have a growing market. And the question is whether we need to add new features, maybe even remove features or update the existing features. So for that specific product team, the challenge was this early stage startup that I led last year. And it started with Open IDEO award that we had received from IDEO in San Francisco. So we pitched this concept of baby registry for maternal services, and we put this concept on the market, and it failed miserably. So we pivoted and we created a new product concept with the name Mommy Helper, and it's still up, so you can go there and see it. So it's just you know, the concept, product concept description there. So with that pivot, we had over 50 interviews from both sides of the market, the maternal service providers as well as the moms. And our internal challenge was how might we translate these findings from those qualitative interviews into actionable insights, and then having an actual backlog of features to build, so we can transform the product concept into an MVP with a specific functionality. So, and this is when we started using a Miro. So what we did, we went through our interviews notes, and you can see here we did a section. We had a section for moms, one side of the market, and the second side of the market is providers. We grouped the insights into, like, we grouped the interviews insights into themes, and we followed the methodology from IDEO, translating the themes into statements to see, for example, for moms, she needs more specific and targeted services, or she has like a emotional vulnerable time in her life, and how we need to address that in our product. So with those insights, we still miss the features, right? So what we did, we had our distributed team consume that research. We had 1.5 hours with online session, and we walked them through the research insights, and they asked additional questions if they weren't part of the research team, so they can understood those insights that we have on the right side for moms as well as for providers. So the next step for us was, during the same session, we asked them to start generating features against the insights that we transformed from themes. And people were writing notes first, and then we asked them to vote on the specific feature set that some of them been aggregated. For example, personalized service engine that might be helpful for mom, so she can get more specific needs covered. And we also had the providers set of features, and that we are able to accomplish that under 1.5 hours. This is incredible efficiency that I never had when I had my offline teams doing the work in office. So it's incredible use of our time, a very visual way to walk people through research, and it's really engaging way to get the team thinking through the features, so they feel that they own to execute that feature. So I don't have to convince them to create the feature. They kind of convincing themselves, so this is the right feature to build. And we know why, because we have research. So at the end of this, we clarified the features that would be useful for our users for this product concept, Mommy Helper. So this is the first case that I covered, that how you can use Miro to engage your product team to consume research and then create a valuable feature set for your product. So Jonathan, maybe we can ask people for any questions, because I know we have small group, maybe makes sense to, or whatever you think might be useful. Or should I continue with?
I think continue along, but just to remind folks, feel free to throw up any comments or questions you have in the chat of Zoom or on the Miro board itself. And if it's aimed at a specific area of the presentation, just maybe let us know that in the question that you write.
Okay.
So
Sounds
please
good.
go on. It's great.
Yeah, please comment, add comments so we can go over them after I finish presenting the cases. So the second case for project team, this is about more of improving your processes, managing your projects, and how you can use Miro to visualize this process improvement. This is about the same company. We organized that company as a nonprofit last year. And the name of the company itself is Motherhood.Design. And what we did, we created community around that nonprofit with the intention to leverage digital folks' expertise in design, marketing, development, so we can create concepts that benefit new mothers, because we know we have not enough support to new mothers, and we want to provide more support to them. And we want to test ideas quickly on the market and finally create a product that would help new mothers. With this intention, we opened the community up saying, if you want to join us, you can join us and co-create solutions with us. And as you see, the list started growing last year. And what we had as a challenge internally, our onboarding process stopped working. So before, it was only me having conversation with newcomers, arranging them, providing the history of the company, and adding them on Slack and on our status goals. But as we grow, that wasn't enough. So I could not keep up with new members coming. And I asked to organize a project team that would research our newcomers to understand what works and doesn't work in the current onboarding process, so we can improve and scale it. So what the project team did is the same process. So they had interviews with new members, asking about their experiences of onboarding on Motherhood.Design. And the project team lead, she used the Miro to put some notes in, and then she organized that under the questions that she asked the participants. And then she summarized her way, like her insights, what exactly we want to focus on when we want to improve the process. So this is the actual insights from interviews. For example, when she asked how we should improve the process, people were saying, well, you just need to streamline the process that you have, provide more context, and show your previous work you've done in the past. With this information, we again had maybe 1 hour, maybe 1.5 session with other teams, so they can consume the results of the research from that project team. And then we had a session, with the same session, we start ideating what solutions we want to implement and what is feasible for us to do in the next sprint. And I just want to highlight, this is like essential way of engaging the team. So basically what we did here, as well as with Mommy Helper, we had the clear phases of phases of a problem definition, like with the synthesis of research. And then when we entering the solution phase, ideating on solutions, it's essential to engage your team or stakeholders so they feel that they contributing, they sharing their ideas, how might we improve that process. So we use the same board on Miro, and we kind of visualize how we want to present the flow to newcomers, what new artifacts we need to create, for example, video introduction or case studies. And the project team lead, she also summarized action items because people started committing to specific items that they willing to do. And she was just listing all the items here with the name of people who will be doing the specific tasks to improve the process. And as a result, once we finished the design sprint, we updated the site. We included the section for joining the community. We specified the steps, how it will look for you if you want to be part of that community. And now the current leadership just feels that whoever joined us, they understand what needs to be done. So it's kind of magic for leadership because it's now a fully automated process. And the last case, it's for marketing team growing community. And this is the last, the recent way for me using Miro. I started doing this initiative just a month ago as a part of a marketing team at UXDC. So this is the Washington, DC area community for user experience professionals and product managers. And I was thinking about the new campaign of engagement with online and offline community around specific topics, but I could not envision like what topics would be the most engaging for the community. So what I'd done, as you might guess, I started doing research. So, but there is a twist how I use these tools, Miro, as well as the social media for this research. So what I did, I asked the community on LinkedIn about the specific pain points they have as agile team and enterprise settings, including not only developers and managers, but business analysts and as well as user experience professionals. So I had a few quotes from people from each role and then combined them on Miro. And as you can see, I still have this grouping, like clustering of the insights. Seems like what we have in enterprises, the majority of times is it might not feel as agile. We have inefficient communication, low UX maturity, and suboptimal solutions. And I made it a little bit of connections between the themes, saying, well, it seems like we're lacking of cross-functional communication generally. So with this information, the next step for me was, because at that time I didn't have a team, right? So I've been doing myself the whole ideation of the marketing campaign and creating new events for UXDC community. So the next step for me was to validate research. So what I did, I export as an image from the Miro, and I put it back on LinkedIn, asking community again whether I synthesized this research correctly. So is that still relevant for you? Does this make sense for you? And the result was excellent. So this post was my top performer last month. And I had engagement from people commenting and liking this and resharing this. So in the end, we organized the workshop based on this topic and people asking for more. So I guess the main takeaway from this story is you can combine the Miro with the visuals, so you can start having interesting interplay with social media as well as the images, because if you're using social media, it's clear that you need to have some visuals with your post. And with Miro, it's really quick and easy to visualize your data, because if you see here I don't have like artistic way of presenting information here, but it's still useful because I use information architecture and I'm using the real quotes from people. And then I'm just grouping this information. So it's more of a holistic approach to understand the current state of the market. So going back to my original question, how might we translate research into action? The steps are basically you do your research, whether it's qualitative interviews or maybe even secondary research, going online, reading other people posts and other forums. And then you visualize the research using Miro. And you use Miro then to engage your team, so then they can be part of the solution, so they can outline next steps. And this way you commit your team to execute on the research-based insights you got from the market. So happy take this your questions now, and later let's connect on LinkedIn so we can continue conversation online as well. Okay.
That's great, Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, if you stop sharing, I can take control back. So everyone should feel free to start tossing up your questions if you have them. I see we have a couple here. Okay, let's start with this one. So what information is most important, the volume of comments related to a particular theme or the impact of the ideas?
When you start doing research, like we do have different types of research. When I presented, for example, Mummy Helper, it was more targeted research because our initial idea was to narrow down the concept. So for us, what most important information was to get the insights that might give us understanding what's going to be the most relevant feature us to build, right? If you think about this last case, when I did the market research for new engagement and events for people, it was a broader concept of what relevant themes would be engaging for people. So in this sense, the most important information was the volume, right? So I need to get the range of information first, and then I can then get additional responses on social media on the specific themes that might be more relevant versus others. So I guess it depends on the research objective. And with UX researcher job, your first thing you need to do is to define objective for your research. And based on that objective, then you can determine what information you need to gather and how you need to structure that information. So if it's not clear, maybe you can ask additional questions
Sure.
about this. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, next one. I love the way you use I need. Would you recommend creating these by persona?
Yeah, you can do this because, in UX research, we do have some templates for persona, but we don't have that template. And I like need more than want. And what I found, like running startup past years, the only way you have chance to succeed with your product if you're serving the need, if you alleviating the pain point. Because people might say, I want to do this, I want to do that, but if you compare with the actual pain they have, I'd rather spend my time designing solutions that alleviate the pain versus the ones they have on top. So yes, definitely, if the way you're going to use need in your persona would be around the pain points that people are aware that they have. Because when we start doing the research on the Mummy Helper, we realized that people cannot predict in advance what pain points they will have as a new parents. And there was a great design challenge for us to overcome. And that's why we pivoted from registry into marketplace, because once they transition into parenthood, their needs are obvious. And now they have vocabulary to search for example, lactation consultant or night nurse, while before, when they were pregnant, they could not even grasp the idea why they need to have a night nurse.
Great. Yeah, I think that resonates a lot for me personally too, because you're always asking clients, you're like, what are the nice to haves versus must haves? And I think that really gets back to the need versus want phrasing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Would you see value in further visualizing the data? And then, for example, bar graphs or histograms to show the volume of themes or ideas?
Yeah, I hate to say this, but as a consultant in the past, it depends.
That's a good consultant answer, though.
Yeah, I know, but I do use now charts, but I use them for quantitative data, because this way I can, show millions and percentage of those, and it makes sense. For qualitative, it's still soft, and it's still a little bit questionable, because it's always a question whether you ask right people, right questions. So personally, I don't feel comfortable to transfer the qualitative data into charts, only because I have less confidence of numbers attached to the insights I got from the market.
That makes sense. Great. Next question is, one of the values of affinity diagramming in a physical space is the unspoken social cues that come from people in a space to keep things constructive. How do you manage this dynamic in an asynchronous tool like Miro?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Yeah, I can see that when you offline, definitely you have lots more empathy going on, and you can read the room much quicker than an online space. I would say you can improve empathy specifically if you build this connections with people before you entering the collaboration online. So what we've done in the past at Motherhood Design, when we were still local, we had once a month, maybe once in 2 months, offline sync ups. And then so we can define the scope of our next design sprint. And then we used Miro to get into details. So I guess my response would be, it still needs to be planned as an offline gathering for your key stakeholders, so you can build empathy before you're doing the collaboration online. That would be ideal.
Oh, great. That's a really interesting perspective to come from. I know in the exercises I've had using Miro with groups doing some of the sorting of comments and all that, we're still usually on a web chat, we're able to still keep a dynamic going. You can't read the physical cues, but you can read the audible cues. I wonder, before we move on to the next question, does anyone else have any comments on experiences they've had with working with data, or anything to follow up? You can feel free to use the Zoom chat, or you can even pipe in on the audio now. It would be okay to speak up if you have an experience with that for Natalie to consider. Or we can move along.
Yeah, we had no audio cue then.
Yeah, I don't know what you're thinking. Oh.
Yeah.
I'm happy to give you an audio cue. Okay, in some cases, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, in some cases, I think you can do a certain limited amount asynchronously, but I think it's always beneficial to be able to actually find a time and do what you guys are doing, what we're all doing now, and jump on the board together. I think that's where the true synergy of collaboration comes from, is actually in the same place in the same time. Now, you don't have to be physically in the same place, but you have to be physically in the same time to bounce off the ideas of each other. I think it works in a limited way, but I think right now I see little evidence that you can do it offline as well, asynchronously, as you can do it online asynchronously as you can do it synchronously, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're saying this type of collaboration that we have now is still creates that synergy because we're using the same medium to share our ideas and comments.
So finally, we have literally everyone on the same page.
Right.
Now we just need to get everyone literally in the same time, right? They don't have to be in the same time zone, but the worst you can be is 12 hours apart.
Yeah.
So you just have to find a spot to get together and catch up and find a point in time where that works. So my experience is the benefit comes from being there at the same time.
Exactly.
I think that's the ideal way to do it. I've had some exposure to, assigning tasks to start to Affinity Charter group comments and had people do it offline of each other. But you always come back to review the results together before moving forward to make sure that everyone's had a chance to comment and to make those shifts at the end of the day.
Look, I think the other thing is that you can kind of, as long as there is somebody who facilitates it, who then has the power and is empowered to make the call, the final call. So people might move things around a bit, but as the facilitator, you might want to do it in another way, and that's got to be agreed that that's okay. It's a bit like collaborating on a Google Docs thing, and people make suggestions, and at the end of the day, somebody's got to be the one who coordinates it and accepts them.
Yep.
Agreed.
There's got to be an owner. That's probably what it comes down to.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay, another question here. Do you think there are limits on the number of people you could include in the data sorting or grouping, or is it more the merrier?
Well, personally, with my experiences, sometimes we had only 3-4 people doing the work, and sometimes we had, just thinking, close to 15, and with over, I would say 15, like even close to 15, it became more challenging for me, only because I was in the role of facilitator. So I need to get the people organized and make sure my instructions are very clear. In terms of technology, I think we have no limit here. It's just the limit of facilitating. I guess I think you can include another facilitator and you can divide and conquer. But my personal experiences for me as a one facilitator, 15 was the max amount of people that I had on the board.
Interesting. I bet that would have been fun to watch.
Well, and some of them just kept silent, so I felt maybe I'm not engaging them enough, and I felt maybe I need to split them up, or maybe have a scope divided differently, so we have one team doing one thing and a few other teams. But I guess it's just a specific of building online community and specific of the work we've been doing at Motherhood.Design.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so we'll do kind of a final call for questions. I don't see any more up right now, but that was great questions and answers that we had. I think it's definitely an eye-opener. It sounds like we had some alignment with how a lot of us out here consider working with this kind of data, and who doesn't have qualitative data that they might lead to group or sort? We should all be asking questions and getting good answers from all over the place. So I think that I just see Marcus maybe putting in another question, but we'll just come back to that in one more second. I'll move on to one more thing, or two more things actually. We do have down below on the Miro board a little bit of a survey that we want to do. We have a chart set up, so on the vertical axis, we have your level of knowledge gained from the presentation and questions, and on the horizontal axis, the degree of knowledge application. So just go ahead and when you get some time today or in the next day or so, grab one of these yellow dots and throw it up on this matrix where you feel the presentation impacted you. It's really great for us as organizers of these events to know how we did and to get some feedback to Natalie as well. And then below that, we have another space. We have some sticky notes set up and we have 3 columns across. So if you have any accolades or congratulations to tell us what went well, please let us know. Any improvements so that we can make things better in future events. And any suggestions if there are topics or areas that particularly interest you. I know Brittany would love to hear that, and so would we. We're always looking for the next big presentation, and trying to keep with this one virtual user group kind of a month, I think would be a very great goal to go after. So any feedback you guys have for us are great. And then just before I go back and see if there were any final questions, there's 2 new websites that have been set up recently. One is for the Miro community. So this is a great place to collaborate, ask questions, get problem solved, both from a content and usability of Miro perspective to even getting down into the theory if people have had similar project questions or concerns. And then we are, Miro is currently working up the events site. And so all future events, both for North America and for the European Miro user groups will be posted up here. And if you can't attend an event in person, we do record all the events. They do end up on the YouTube page. It's great to go back and catch up and see, again, how other folks are using Miro and to get into their specific topics of discussion. So you should check out both of those communities. One quick check back, there's no additional questions, and I'm going to quickly clear off the Zoom. We have no questions there. So you've answered all the questions in the world, Natalie. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, I hope this is because I've been clear with my case, or not because people are confused.
I don't think so. I think it was very clear, and it was great to see the progression of your projects along the way to go from chaos to completion, I think is a good phrase to use. So I think if there are no other questions or anything like that, we can wrap this one up. Event. Thanks again to Natalie for coming out. Thanks to everybody for attending. And thanks again to Brittany for getting it all organized and running.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you online.
Perfect.